Welcome to today's webinar in the Knowledge Miles series, part of the Lord Mayor's lectures on behalf of Alderman Professor Michael Manelli, whose theme for his mayoral year is Connect to Prosper. In this free online lecture series, we address the connections in and around the square mile, what Michael likes to call the world's coffee house, and how these might help to tackle future global challenges. I'm Professor Tim Connell, Chairman of the Gresham Society and a Fellow of Gresham College here in the City of London. I'm also a liveryman of the Stationers' Company. I'll be convening this session and moderating the questions and answers after today's lectures. So this is the plan for today. Very short introduction from me, the keynote presentation from Sean Foster, and then we'll have time for questions and answers after that. Today we've got a really good topic, Thames Vision 2050, a safe, sustainable and thriving port for London. This will be a topic of particular interest for the Lord Mayor because he's Admiral of the Port of London as well as Lord Mayor of the City. I'm delighted to welcome Sean Foster, Director of Corporate Affairs here at the Port of London Authority. So firstly, Sean, can you tell us something about yourself?
Of course. Hi, everyone. I'm Director of Corporate Affairs. I'm responsible for internal and external communication, stakeholder engagement, and the Thames Vision at the Port of London Authority. I'm a relative newcomer to the Port of London. Lots of colleagues I work with have been with the organisation for decades, so I think I've got a new girl advantage for another 10 years or so before I'm really one of the family. But it's a fascinating industry, and I hope I do it justice today. And I know the Lord Mayor is a massive champion of the river, has a huge amount of knowledge and expertise and passion, and hopefully I bring some of that across today.
Well, I think it's a really good topic. As a man of Kent, I have a particular historic interest in the Thames Estuary, so I'm looking forward to this very much indeed. So can you tell us more about the Thames Vision for 2050 and
Absolutely.
how to create a safe, sustainable and thriving port for London? Over to you.
Absolutely, thank you. And hopefully my slides will be coming online soon. Hope you can see them. So thank you, everyone. As I said, it's a real honour to be able to speak about this today. But first of all, what is the Port of London? What are we here to do? Fundamentally, we are here to protect and improve the tidal Thames for all. In simple terms, that means that we hold the Port of London, the Thames, in trust, and we make sure that it is passed on to future generations in a better condition. So our mission is a thriving river, home to the UK's #1 port. We're a trust port. That means we have no shareholders. We operate purely for the benefit of customers and stakeholders now and in the future. And that means when we're making business decisions, when we're thinking about our environmental and social commitments, they're hardwired into our DNA. Our very purpose is to make sure that we're making the right decisions by the river and the communities that live alongside it, enjoy it, and the people who work on it. We work with industry, environmental groups, and a vast array of different stakeholders to make this happen and to achieve that joint vision for the river and for the Thames Estuary region. So what is the Port of London? What is our responsibility, our jurisdiction? We're responsible for 150 kilometres, about 95 miles of fast-flowing river. That's from Teddington Lock or an obelisk. We were just talking about this just before we started. An obelisk about 150 metres downriver of Teddington Lock in West London, through the City of London, past the Thames Barrier, the Port of Tilbury, our head office in Gravesend, London Gateway, one of the world's fastest growing ports, and then out to the North Sea. The river has 7 metres of tidal range, so as you can imagine, that makes a huge difference to access to the port by different sizes of vessels at different points during the day. So we have to be really, really mindful of that. But it also means that people have access to that amazing historical treasure trove that is the foreshore, as long as they have a foreshore permit and are a licensed mudlarker. A little bit of history about the Port of London. So really, this slide should go back to Roman times, because the history of London is the history of the Port of London. London's only here because it was the easiest place for the Romans arriving from the south to cross the river around 2,000 years ago. But in the 1800s, there were a number of different rival wharves. There was people competing on the river. There was all sorts of different people trying to tout their trade, different sized vessels, and it was known as absolute chaos. So the 1908 Port of London Act was designed to bring order to that chaos. And in the years that followed, starting in 1910, there was a big period of investment, modernisation, deepening the river and modernising the port. Up until 1964, when we hit peak trade of around 60 million tonnes of cargo coming through the port. But then through the 1970s, there was the closure of the river docks, upriver docks, where a lot of housing is today, lots of economic and social development in those old dockyards and dock areas, as the real port operations moved downriver towards the deeper water, allowing for the bigger vessels to access. And then in 1992, the Port of London, the Tilbury docks were privatised, and that's the last time that the Port of London Authority had responsibility for terminal operations. All of those port terminals, all those operations are privatised now and run by a variety of different businesses. Then in 2013, London Gateway opened, and that's now one of the world's fastest growing ports, and I'll talk a bit more about that later. And that brings us to the present day of 2024. So as we have been for most of the last 2,000 years, we are the UK's largest port. 51.6 million tonnes of goods handled in 2023. That's a little bit down on the previous year, reflecting global economic challenges and some of the issues in the Red Sea, but still the UK's largest port. And you'll forgive the slightly cheeky picture here. We wanted to make sure that newly elected and returning MPs knew that their offices were based on the UK's, right alongside the UK's biggest port. So we put some big banners on some of our barges on moorings right outside the Palace of Westminster, shortly after the election, up until just a few days ago. So what does that 51.6 million tonnes of cargo comprise of? Well, it's a mix of different products, whether it's oil, aggregates and cement, containers and trailers, metal and ore, forest products, so decking, fences, a lot of that would come through the port, and other. If you've had a glass of wine within the M25, chances are that wine has arrived through the Port of London, same as a cup of coffee. All of those essential items travel through the port, and we connect the rest of the world with London and London with the rest of the UK as well. More than 10,000 pilotage acts allowed that cargo to enter the UK. We supply, part of our commitment towards navigational safety, we provide pilots, sea pilots from the estuary up to Gravesend, and then river pilots from Gravesend into central London, who have incredible amounts of expertise and knowledge and a big background in the maritime sector before they even arrive at the Port of London Authority and do some intensive training to learn the very specific conditions of the Thames, so that they can guide these vessels of a variety of different sizes, carrying a wide range of different products and passengers, and guide them safely into and out of their berths. And it's that training and constant recruitment of pilots that mean we can offer a service level of around 99.6%, something we're very committed to maintaining. But there were also around 9 million passengers on the river in 2023, and a little over 3 million tonnes of inland freight. And that means that not only are we the UK's biggest port, but we're the busiest inland waterway as well. And that inland waterways freight is a variety of things being brought in from the ports up the river, but it's also moving waste from London to be processed in East London and then taken out to other processing facilities. It is aggregates and spoil from big building construction projects. So if you're on London Bridge, you look towards Minerva House in Southwark, right next to London Bridge. A lot of the waste from that big construction project is being moved on the river, as was the spoil from the Tideway tunnel excavations, taking hundreds of thousands of lorries off the road. And that's something we're very passionate about, keeping improving and growing. There will be also around 645 sporting events on the river, everything from the Oxford and Cambridge race, which is televised all around the world, to rowing and sailing competitions and kayaking, And on the 21st of September, as part of the Totally Thames Festival, there'll be the annual Great River Race, when hundreds of different boats will be out on the river competing in a particularly arduous race up the river. I'll be watching from a boat that's following, but I'm looking forward to that. But most importantly of all, there were 0 serious navigational incidents in 2023, and I'll come now to talk a little bit more about our focus on safety and how we support that. So safety of navigation is absolutely core to who we are and what we do. Our job is to maintain safe navigation of channels, and we put in place measures to enable that, whether that's navigation lights and buoys, our hydrographic services that constantly mapping and charting the river. The Thames is largely silt, it means it moves. The different vessels coming up and down the river move that silt, so you have deeper channels where they're moving often. But with that tidal range and with the size of the vessels that access the Thames, we need to have incredibly detailed charts and maps of exactly what's going on underneath the water, to a kind of an accuracy of around 10 centimetres, because that's the degree of predictability that those big commercial operators need. So a hydrographic team are constantly measuring, monitoring, using laser, radar, all sorts of different technologies to make sure we have that detailed information and that we can make it available to the people who need it. We also manage the safe movement of vessels, including through our vessel traffic services. So it's a bit like air traffic control, they just move slightly more slowly. But we have 2 different sites, one just next to the Thames barrier, one in Gravesend, through which we monitor all of that traffic on the river and make sure that it is operating in a safe manner. We also have a harbour master team split between the upper, middle and lower districts of the river, who are constantly patrolling, keeping an eye on people, making sure they're following the rules of the river, and helping maintain that safety of navigation. And the pilotage services that we offer, I've mentioned before, but fundamentally all of these things come together to collectively make sure that we are minimising the opportunity and risk of those serious navigational incidents. So coming on to the Thames Vision. So this is our long-term vision looking out to 2050. And it was developed and published in 2022, and there's the next iteration of a Thames Vision. There was one before that. And it sets out that long-term aspiration for how we want the river to be by 2050. It's split between 3 core themes: Trading Thames, where we set out our ambition to be the #1 net zero UK trading hub. We want to grow. We anticipate around 50% growth between now and 2050. So how do we do that in the right way, in a safe way, in a sustainable way, in a resilient way, and in a smart way? Destination Thames is about making sure the river's a place to live, visit, play and enjoy. It is accessible to all and a national and international icon for the city and for the wider country. And Natural Thames, making sure that we're improving the quality of air, water and land, and that it's supporting diverse wildlife. Back in 1957, the river was declared biologically dead, and since then it has improved a lot. There's a much greater variety of wildlife, but improving that water quality and working with the water companies to do that is absolutely core to what we are. So I thought, rather than just talking about that long-term strategy, I would break it down into more nearer term case studies. So we have an action plan out to 2030 that sets out some key deliverables that we and our partners will do to maintain progress towards those big, bold ambitions in 2050. And there's a lot of work already happening to make sure that we are keeping on track. So first of all, looking at Natural Thames and that ambition for a clean river free of sewage, waste and other pollution, but also around clean air, water and land. I thought it would be useful just to focus in on a couple of key activities that we're working on here. So our overview of sustainability, how do we tackle these sustainability challenges? Well, first of all, it's improving the sustainability of our own operations, getting our own house in order. Secondly, looking at how we improve the sustainability of those 150 kilometres of the tidal Thames. And then thirdly, how can we work with the wider industry and the UK as a whole to support that sustainable transition? And we do that through those different themes of climate, air quality, water quality, and biodiversity. I think I've got 25 minutes to talk today. I'm not going to be able to go into detail in all of those, so I thought I'd pick out climate and air quality as a couple of areas of focus. So our air quality strategy, well, we were the first port to publish an air quality strategy in 2018. It's an action plan for continued reduction in pollutants out to 2050, and we're working on an update to that strategy that will be published in the near future. So through that, we established riverside air quality monitoring networks and making sure that we had live data on the quality of air along that river, and we created a detailed emissions inventory off the back of that. Excuse me one second. And those little red dots set out where those air quality monitoring stations are. And through that emissions inventory in 2021, that was around activity-based air quality data, and those findings helped us identify hotspots on the river where we can direct future action. Where should we be prioritising our efforts and focusing on work? And it's a very detailed map. I'm not sure if you can zoom into it on your screens, but as you might expect, the measuring the NOx, tons of NOx, it's higher in those busier urban areas where there's a mix of different potential contributors to those pollutants, so whether it's road traffic or other industry, but it's still around where some of the core industry for the Thames is as well, and areas where we need to make sure we are focusing our efforts and the efforts of our partners on the river as well. So our plan for tackling air pollution, first of all, is building that evidence base. So we need to know where those hotspots are. We need to make sure that we are monitoring what's working, what doesn't, building that evidence base so that we can invest and champion the right solutions and make sure that they are working. Having that evidence allows us to target those areas of concern and make sure that we're making the right actions in the interest of human and environmental health. Thirdly, it's around supporting the transition to low and zero emission fuels. And that's our own fleet, but it's also how can we support the wider industry to transition to lower fuels as well, and through that to reduce emissions. How can we advocate for better air quality on and around the river and improve that perception of the Thames? And then finally, how can we embed air quality considerations into our own decision making? And I'm a member of EXCO, and this is one of the topics that comes up regularly within our EXCO discussions as what are the air quality impacts of a particular action. Through that, we've developed a maritime emissions portal that shows that heat map of emissions. And one of the ways in which we've done that is through a partnership with RightShip. So RightShip creates this maritime emissions portal, and that dashboard allows us to visualise the port in incredible amounts of detail across 16 different vessel-sourced emission types. And so they use a variety of different data inputs and a variety of different informations to really do that detailed map of air quality and CO2 emissions on the river. And as I said, we're the first UK port to use this assessment tool, and it's something that we're really excited to be using because it's allowing us to focus those efforts in a lot more detail. There's a video on our website, I can send around the link afterwards, that shows this in a lot more detail. I didn't want to risk trying to play a video today, but it's really fascinating, the actions and the levels of information and the usability of that information that is generated through this portal. And as well as local air quality, we also are thinking around global climate change as well. And we all know that climate change is one of our biggest threats to society and to sea level, and there's a port that is obviously of keen interest to us, including its impact on weather conditions. And so we need to make sure that we are looking at our climate change contributions as well. So the PLA's own carbon footprints between 2014, when we established our baseline, and 2023 decreased significantly. But that's our own direct emissions. We also need to look at wider emissions within the industry and within the customers that serve the port. We've taken a variety of different actions to achieve that reduction. One of the biggest is through transitioning our own fleet of vessels, so our harbour service launches, our marine services vessels, to sustainable hydro-treated vegetable, I can never say that, HVO, transitioning to biofuel for all of those vessels and making sure it's the sustainably sourced biofuel as well. We've also been electrifying our fleet, installing electric vehicle charging, and using the roof at our marine services base in Denton, just near Gravesend, to install solar panels. And we got those installed in December, and we were absolutely delighted to see that on New Year's Eve, not a particularly sunny day, we were a net contributor through the energy generated through those panels. So we're really excited about their contribution to our energy needs over time. But as well as getting our own house in order, we are looking at how we work with partners on the river as well. And a number of different actions for 2024 through a net zero coalition that we established as one of our commitments to the Thames Vision. And they are working on actions from green corridors, electric charging points. How can we bring different opportunities to river users and help them improve their sustainability journey as well? How can we work together and have a collective voice for these solutions? Conscious of time, so I'm going to skip over this one and get on to Trading Thames. So we have that ambition to be the #1 net zero trading hub. And that means that we need to be prepared to accommodate that 50% growth between 2025 and 2050, so over the lifetime of this vision, and meaning that we have to future-proof, making sure that we've got the right technologies in place, the right skills, capabilities and capacities to be able to support that growth. And in order to do that, we're investing around £10 million of the surplus that we generate through our fees and charges into our Marine Centre Transformation Programme. So based in Gravesend, this is around transforming our vessel traffic services port operations centre, bringing the two VTSs, the one based at Thames Barrier and the one based at Gravesend, bringing them both into Gravesend. So we have one central point through which we manage the river, and improving operational efficiency, and through that improving sustainability performance as well. So we are investing in a new vessel traffic services system. So this is a system that is used by other ports, but so it's not brand new, but the learnings that they have generated through this system and its potential to adapt to use AI and other technologies in the future is immense. And so it's going to enable us to cope with that additional 50% of growth over the next couple of decades. But it's not just about the technology itself, it's also about how people use it. So we're transforming the working environment as well, making the most of ergonomics, making the most of sight lines, how people work together, how we can plan for how people will work in the future, making sure we have a facility in Gravesend that will support that. And we're trying to make that transition as seamless as possible. You know, we can invest in all the technology in the world, but it's really important that our people are confident in using it and that we're minimising any impact on our customers. They should not notice any difference. So that means even when we're transitioning to this new system, as far as possible, repeating those kind of the muscle memory controls that they're used to using with the current one, so that they can translate that very, very quickly onto the new system when it's installed. And for all that we're investing in this new technology, we use cardboard, mock-ups of cardboard desks and office layouts to understand how people will use the system, how they use it now, and how we can organise the layout of the office space or the control centre space to best facilitate this new way of working. And so we had this load of different cardboard desks and pretend screens and everything so that we can really make sure that we were designing it in a way that would work for our people, and through that would work for the safe operation of the river. And then the final theme of Thames Vision is Destination Thames, a place to live, visit, play and enjoy. One of the key aspects of that is our Active Thames programme, something that we work on with partners, including the national governing bodies of a lot of this water sports. And it's all about encouraging active use of our unique blue space in London. So we think a lot about London's parks, its green space, but we also have this amazing blue space on the river as well. In 3 years so far, £430,000 has gone to 56 clubs in London, Kent and Essex, with a particular focus on connecting new audiences, people who wouldn't traditionally engage with the river, with the Thames and its waterways. And that could be walking. So we've supported Age UK and walking clubs in North Kent. It could be paddling, it could be sailing, and so much more. And the next funding round opens later this month. And so we're really excited to make sure that we're getting full coverage of the whole of the river and helping more people get to enjoy this blue space. Also, as part of this, we have a Tidal Thames master plan. So this is all about mapping opportunity on the tidal Thames as well, and another key deliverable for the Thames Vision. And through this, we are mapping every single one of the 20-something boroughs along the Thames, making sure we have a detailed understanding of the opportunities to reintroduce access to the river, bring together sporting, leisure, business, cultural opportunities as well, and support the planning process so that access to the river, thinking of the river, is first and foremost in planners' minds when they're approving or thinking about new developments. Because for many, many years, London turned its back on the river. If you look down the Thames, so many different homes, offices that were built decades ago, they barely even look at the river, whereas now we understand how important it is to people's mental and physical well-being. And so we're looking again at the river, how can we make it part of people's lives in a really, really productive way. We started off with Bexley, and then working through Newham, Tower Hamlets, Greenwich and Gravesham. But over the next couple of years, we'll have worked through all of the boroughs along the river and created detailed master plans. And these are all available on our website. I won't go into detail on them now, but they've identified a variety of different opportunity areas. And even just through our first one at Bexley, managed to introduce 2 different business owners who didn't know that they could work together, didn't know each other existed, and they've identified an opportunity to work together and improve access to the river for people through that. So what's next? Well, there's lots going on. This picture is of the cranes arriving in London Gateway for London Gateway Berth 4, which is a fully electric berth within that port. It's coming on stream later this year and will significantly increase trade on the port and do that in a lower carbon way. And they have plans to open a further 2 berths over the coming years, so we need to be able to accommodate that. We're also looking at the launch of Tideway Tunnel, so the biggest engineering project under the Thames since Bazalgette, which will make a huge difference to improving water quality on the river. And then we're also really excited next year, thinking ahead to the 2050 deadline of the Thames Vision, and thinking about who are the people in the workforce who are going to be working for us in 2050. So looking at how can we engage them through 2025? How can we get young people to think about the river as a future career, as somewhere to enjoy for sports and recreation, somewhere to live? And so we'll be launching our Thames Visionary project as well, trying to get more people actively engaged with the river and excited about the future potential for lower carbon transport, but also as long-term careers as well. So open to Q&A now. I think I'm about on time.
Well, I think we've covered some very interesting topics there. There are lots of items that certainly I would like to ask about, but I really must throw it out to the audience first. Shane Drinian comes up with probably the most contentious topic at the moment, which is whether the PLA is working with Thames Water to reduce sewage spillages. Does the PLA have a say in how Thames Water uses the river?
No, we don't have a say. So whilst we are responsible for the tidal Thames, we do not control what enters the river. However, we have a very keen interest, as you might imagine. In 2023, we published our Clean Thames Manifesto, and that sets out how we are working with the water companies and other partners to help clean up the river. And most importantly, I think it includes a commitment from the water companies, including Thames Water, to bring forward the deadline from which they will stop discharging sewage into the Thames. So yeah, we can't control it directly, but what we can do is encourage, convene, and put pressure on, because we want to see the river cleaner as well.
Can you tell us more about the Tideway Tunnel, which you said was coming on stream shortly? Perhaps on stream
Yes,
isn't the right word.
yeah. So Tideway Tunnel, it's I almost left a slide in on this, and I took it out last night. I should have kept it. So Tideway Tunnel is expected to reduce by around 95% the amount of stormwater discharge into the river when it comes on stream next year. So it's been a huge feat of engineering, the biggest similar project of a similar scale since Bazalgette did the sewers in Victorian times. So it's been an absolutely mammoth task. It's being led by Thames Water and Tideway Tunnel. It's not our project, but as you can imagine, we are one of the key consultees on the project. So we've been working with them on consenting, on how they move spoil from the river, and making sure that once the CSOs, the sewage outputs are operational, that river users know what to do when they are operational, how to reduce any safety impacts as a result. So yeah, we've been working with them for a long time. We're hopeful that it will make a big difference.
Yes, no, I think we're all hoping that. Now, Julia George has sailed into the Thames up to Limehouse, so she's experienced how extremely busy a river it is. So she finds it hard to envisage how can you sustain 50% growth by 2050. So how can you manage that without compromising your other targets to keep the river clean and still available for sport and leisure? That's quite a meaty one.
That is quite a meaty one. So I think that's around, as I was saying, that investment in vessel traffic services. So really making sure that we can safely manage that flow of vessels into and out of the port at high tide, low tide, whenever it is that they're able to move. So using that vessel traffic services team and function to make sure that that is being managed in a safe way. I think it's around engagement as well and education. So one of the benefits of our Active Thames programme is how we can engage with sports clubs and other recreational users of the river to make sure they understand how to use the river safely as well. So I think education will be key to that. But we do see that there is plenty of space on the river for significant amount of growth, both recreationally and commercially as well.
Yes, well, I have to say, I go rowing at Teddington Lock, and the earlier you go out, the more space there is on the river, I have to say. And on one glorious occasion, I was paddling along, and a black head suddenly appeared next to my boat. And I looked again, thought it was a dog, and it disappeared and came up the other side. It was a seal, and he
Oh,
stayed
wow.
with me. I was trying to row, and he stayed inside my oar so that I couldn't. And I'm sure he was laughing at me. And he stayed about 2 miles down the river. What about the larger wildlife? I mean, we hear of seals, dolphins, the occasional whale. Does this indicate that the river is getting cleaner?
Well, like I said, in 1957, the river was declared biologically dead, so it has improved significantly since then. There's huge numbers of different, um, lots of different species that are identified on the river each year. Yes, we do see dolphins, porpoises, whales. I think um, we sometimes that indicates that they're not very well. They may have got lost. So actually, we prefer to see slightly fewer of them sometimes. But it is good to see that variety of wildlife. And it's the wildlife you can see, but also there's a huge amount of biodiversity on the foreshore and within the silt and within the riverbanks as well that we need to protect. And biodiversity is a big priority for us going forwards.
Yes, I have to say, again, mentioning Teddington Lock, since I'm there almost every week, there is actually a salmon leap. Is there any chance of salmon ever reappearing in the Thames?
I'm going to have to take that question away, I'm afraid. We do have an ecologist in as part of our environmental team. I am definitely not one, but let me take that question away and I'll ask someone who would know better than me.
It's just a lovely thought sitting there on the bank of the Thames watching salmon leaping up a leap, but there we are. I think we'll probably have to wait a bit for that one. Now, David Holmes is interested in how to address the impacts of climate change regarding storm surges and sea level rises. How much of a threat is that, do you think?
Um, I think it's something that we as a society need to think about. We already have the Thames barrier in place, which is designed to help manage those higher tides and to prevent flooding upriver of the Thames barrier. So we work with the Environment Agency and a number of different organisations to look longer term, to look at how can we as a port, but also how can we as a society predict and plan for those changes in sea levels, particularly those more acute storm surges. So I don't have the answer right now, but I think it's something that we collectively need to be looking at, and that we as the Port of London Authority are part of those discussions.
Well, if other viewers as well as David are interested, I point you to the lecture given by Carolyn Roberts on the 7th of March in the Lord Mayor's lecture series, and she is from the Water Conservators Company, and I'm sure she knows a lot about the topic. And again, as a man of Kent, I'm always very interested in the future of the Thames Estuary, and whether or not at some time we'd have to have another barrier down Thames from the one we've already got. But I suspect that is a much larger question. Oh, here we are, and there's Carolyn actually asking a question. I think we might have raised this. Can you say more about your approach to a potential new flood barrier on the Thames? It's a subject dear to her heart, I know.
I can imagine it is. I do not want to put the words in the mouths of colleagues who are much more expert on this than I am. But I'd be very, very happy to take that question offline. Apologies for not answering it. I know there's a huge amount of work going into it, and colleagues within the PLA are very actively involved. It's not something I'm directly familiar with, so I'm happy to take that away and come back to you, or introduce you to the people in the PLA that'd be better to talk to.
Oh, yes, please. That would be very useful. Now, Michael Crossbland is wondering about whether emissions out to sea are almost unregulated. Are there ways in which shipping companies can be encouraged to be greener when actually going up to or coming from the Port of London? It's a poor old Thames Estuary again, you see.
So when vessels are within our jurisdiction, we have a number of different ways that we can do that. So we have green schemes, and we have other ways where operators get discounts if they can demonstrate to us that they are using cleaner technologies, if they're reducing their emissions and taking their environmental responsibilities seriously. So we have kind of environmental incentives within our charging and fees structure for that. I think looking outside of the river, that is a global issue, and it's something that is being considered at the global stage through the IMO and through other international organisations. We can absolutely play our part in that, and we can be part of that kind of ecosystem, but we don't have the direct control of those emissions outside of our river.
So who actually is responsible for the Thames Estuary? Sorry to keep on coming back to it, but if you stop at sort of a line drawn more or less between Southend and Whitstable, what happens to the rest of the estuary?
So our responsibility for safety navigation would be from around there, but there's a variety of different agencies that have responsibility for the seas and waterways. So whether that's the Marine Coast Guard Agency, whether that's the DFT and others, but there's a huge number of different organisations that would have responsibility.
Hopefully things don't fall between different organisations. But there we are.
I think it's genuinely it's genuinely a priority across the whole of the sector. I'm afraid I'm only really able to talk about what the Port of London Authority is doing today.
Yes, of course. Now, your first piece of fan mail from Pamela Mounter, great presentation. How will the tidal Thames master plan enable wharves to be protected rather than built on for housing overlooking the river?
So it's a really great question. Thank you. So one of the responsibilities of the Port of London Authority is to safeguard wharves, is to make sure that when the wharves are maintained and brought back into use for the river. So we want to make sure that where there is access to the river, it can be used by businesses, it can be used by recreational users, it can be used by communities. It isn't kind of blocked off and prevented, and access prevented, and they're just kind of left to dwindle. So through the master planning process, and there's a huge amount of detail on our website with maps and charts that you can really drill down into and identify all these wharves and how they're used and what they could be used for. That's all about identifying where those opportunities are, making sure that planners, and we work with borough councils on these master plans, are fully aware of where these safeguarded wharves are and how they can be factored into new developments. And we are very, very keen to make sure that we protect those and bring those back into use where at all possible. And we like to almost, it's like a sort of matchmaking service. Can we link this particular operator with this particular wharf and make sure that it's brought back into use? Because it is a working river, it is a port, and so how do we make sure that it continues to do that?
Very unfair question, but I did raise it just before we started. What about the tributaries and little rivers like the Fleet and the Wonderland, the Walbrook and all the others? Who do they come under?
Some of them are Environment Agency, and then some are the Canals and Rivers Trust. So it's a variety of different organisations and agencies. The map of our responsibility sometimes ducks a little bit into some of these creeks, but not very far. We're predominantly the tidal Thames. I think that 95 miles is plenty for us to have to be responsible for.
Have to be getting on with, yes. Daniel is actually continuing with this topic really about what channels do you use to educate your stakeholders about the use of the river, the environmental strategies that companies might undertake. How do you reach out to people?
So we have a variety of different channels that we use. So like other organisations, we use our website. We have a Tidal Thames newsletter that goes out every couple of weeks, and you can subscribe to that on our website. We have notices to mariners that are the sort of issued by our harbour master team, and they have kind of those safety directions. We use those to inform people. We use social media channels, but we bring river users together as well. So we have 3 public meetings a year, one for the Upper District from Teddington down to Putney, one for the Middle District from Putney to Crossness, roughly the Thames Barrier, and one for the Lower District, Crossness to the estuary. And then we also have annual stakeholder forums, river users groups, all sorts of different ways in which we engage with people on the river. It's something we do constantly. But yeah, sign up to the Tidal Thames News, follow us on what used to be Twitter or LinkedIn, and you'll be able to get all the updates about what we're up to, as well as some of those groups like the Net Zero Coalition and other more specific groups on activities on the river too.
Well, you have a direct question here from Pamela Mounter. She's great to hear about the protection, but she's with the IWA Freight Group, and she wonders how they can help. So there's a point of contact for you.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. Should we follow up afterwards? It'd be great to hear more.
That would be very useful indeed. Yes, now I'm afraid we're running out of time. I have to say this has been of particular interest to me because somehow, apart from my time living in South America, I've always lived somewhere along the Thames, whether it was Whitstable, Oxford, Ham or Esher, Teddington, wherever. And so the Thames has always been a subject very dear to my heart, and I think to many other people as well. So very, very interesting to hear more about all of this. And yes, as Sian has said, there are lots and lots of sources of information to follow up on with. Now, on with the Lord Mayor's lectures, let's have a brief look at some of the things which are coming up in the next week or two. On the 17th, mental health and the Galenos project, a subject which the Lord Mayor is very keen on, well worth finding out more about that. The brain we've tackled once or twice, and we have another one coming up with Laura Lewington on the 6th of November. How designing for brain health can help tackle the loneliness epidemic, a good topic. And the 26th of September, ethical digital technology. Well, digital technology we've covered quite a lot, and ethics seem to pop up all the time. So those are things to look forward to. So thank you very much to the audience. We've had some very good questions. I'm sorry I couldn't take them all, but there we are. And of course, thank you very much indeed to Sian Foster from the Port of London Authority. Fascinating to see this enormous range of work and to have more of an insight into the way in which it all operates. I was particularly interested in this idea of dividing the Thames into 3 segments, because obviously the Teddington to Crossness to further down, 3 almost very different rivers to think about within the same context. So that was very interesting indeed. So all of our lectures are recorded and posted on the Gresham Society website, You'll also find us on our YouTube channel, and you get the questions and answers there as well. And we hope to see you all again soon in, next week for another lecture in the Knowledge Mile series. And let's all remember the Lord Mayor's theme for the year, which is Connect to Prosper. Thank you, Sean. Thank you to the audience, and goodbye.
Thank you.